Hello and welcome back to The Dive presented by Honda Season 5, Episode 1, baby. And we're going to title this one, Better Late Than Never. Because we did have some, technical issues setting up.
We had technical issues.
Some of us had technical issues. Some of us, it was very smooth for, and we didn't even notice there was anything going on.
We got new recording kits for all the remote broadcasting for this split though, and setting them up and everything. Honestly though, how has the season 11 been? I've actually been grinding again. After taking the WoW break, I had to get rid of my WoW hands and jump right back into rank season. And I've been immediately pulled back in because the beginning of season is the most fun because you win a disproportionate amount of games. Later on in the year when you're at like 51, 52% win rate or whatever, half the time you're pissed off. Right now, I'm just like, oh my God, the wins just keep coming. I'm so happy. League is so fun. Why would I ever stop playing?
That's because you're a jungler. You're OP right now.
True.
The junglers are slamming everybody, I feel like, both in competitive and in solo queue. It feels like jungle is just dominating with the new changes. I feel like not having to go towards these kind of more like eco builds with the jungle item and everything has changed things a lot. People are complaining about Graves 24/7. Like Graves has all these different builds that he can go. You can do like the full on like life drain tank with Bloodthirster and shield bow. You can do more aggressive stuff with like Eclipse. You can go for all kinds. You can go for the mobility one. You can go like all kinds of different builds and just dominate. So it's pretty interesting to see all of these different things that are kind of popping up. And I think jungle is a lot more interesting because of it, because it's kind of like what they did to support last year, where you no longer were locked into building like face of the mountain or whatever first, right? You can just build an item. And now junglers can do that too. So you can have Graves running around, with all these different builds instead of kind of being like locked into going warrior first every game.
Yeah. I think the itemization is really exciting. As soon as like they had two different dot items with Demonic Embrace and Leandri's Anguish, I was like, I'm playing Drain builds, and I just try to find all the dot things I could do. I'm also not a mid laner, so that went pretty terribly. It's also funny when Kobe's talking about like his elitist point of view on placement games. He's like, I just get to win all this time in a row. I always waited for placements because, I wanted all you people out of my games. All the challengers who are going to like randomly show up and smurf on their way up to the top. I'm like, I'm going to wait. I'm going to give it a week or two for all those people to rise to the top.
Theoretically, everybody should win a disproportionate more amount of games at the beginning because you were rated here and you get reset.
But
at least some amount.
Your MMR is still the same. Like the
MMR changes too. It doesn't change all the way back, but it does go back.
It's a soft
some.
reset. Yeah,
it's like a soft reset.
Yeah.
There's definitely reset.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I guess it just feels like everyone gets bumped down to the same level, right? Because it's like you watch Doublelift playing in Diamond, but he's not playing against Diamond players. He's playing against Challenger players who are also in Diamond, right?
Exactly. I'm like, I don't want to be there.
Yeah,
I'll wait.
You get squished down, and that's why you see also there's always all these tweets and challenger players complaining about the beginning of season, like, oh, these diamond players think they're hot shit getting early season,
because they spam up there,
high rated, and they're just like, get these trash out of my games, and all the diamond players are like, woo, I made it.
I mean, I think if you make it, you deserve it. I think it's cool, whether it's late season, early season, whether it means as much, who cares, right? It's still cool if you can get up there and achieve that, like whether it's early season or late season. But I mean, MMR is obviously more wonky until people have played more games. But I do think that a lot of the changes are pretty exciting. I think that there's a lot of fun builds. I've started playing a little bit of Rel. I'm trying to learn some Rel. I played a game with Flowers the other day. I think that is a really, really fun champion. Seems like there's a lot of cool combos that you can do. And it does feel like there is more flexibility in builds, I think, with mythic items than there was previous. Like a lot of champions, you don't have to build a mythic item first. Sometimes even if you are going mythic item, it does feel like there's actually, different situations in which you would want different ones. So I do feel like there is a bit more diversity, but I don't know if that's just because
it's early.
Everything hasn't been as hammered out yet. and people haven't hit like no, it's actually, this is always optimal. But I'd like to think that, it's still going to be, situational, because I think those are the most fun types of builds for me, is when you can do it based on the game and feel more rewarded, whether you need more engage for a chem tank, or you need more defensive stuff and you get Locket, or you go Sunfire because you want pure tank or whatever.
I'm hoping it's kind of like Keystones, like there's generally the rune that you're going to take in 90% of 85, 70, whatever it is, percent of situations, but then you have the variation ones that you can opt for. I assume that's how it'll be if I was going to compare it to anything, which I don't know if that's exactly the amount of diversity they wanted.
I mean, you always want as much as possible, and theoretically, you want to be able to choose between all these different situations and counters, and have counter moves and all that type of stuff. But the more that people play it, it always does get whittled down a bit. So I'd say it's one of those things where it is a gray area, a little bit of both. But I have so much fun at the beginning because more people are making suboptimal and wrong decisions, and so you get to see more variety, but you also get to take advantage of more different situations, and it's just so fun at the beginning. Unfortunately for me, the 3 champions that I have been spamming are all on the list for the nerfs for next patch. Wonder why. But I've been spamming like Olaf with Gore Drinker, Elise if I need AP, and then after watching LPL opening day, I jumped on that Pantheon Gore Drinker train as well. That's some super fun stuff.
So you're not a Graves abuser. I was gonna say
I'm
the kind of mobility build with Gale Force.
You know why? Because Graves is banned like 90% of my games.
Yeah, like when our stats team actually, had a little spreadsheet of like the most commonly built mythic items, and in competitive so far, it was like early on LPL and LCK, Gale Force had been built 50 times. The next most common was Luden's 39, because all the mid laners are going for wave clear and competitive. That kind of makes sense. And then surprise, Gore Drinker, and then from there it drops off very, very heavily. But Gale Force just seems to be like. Originally, I was kind of thinking like this is an item that is going to be hard to use, use effectively, because at least in the like preseason video when they're hyping it up, they're like use it to dodge skill shots and stuff. And I'm like pro play, like dodge the Blitzcrank hook. That sounds good, but I feel like for the most part, a lot of people are now just using it because the damage is so high, right? So people are just buying it on ADs and just like Gale forcing in and killing you off when you're trying to kite away.
I think it's cool.
It's so strong.
I think
it's
cool.
too strong right now.
Yeah, it's definitely too strong. But the idea of having 80 carries with an item to go in to kill, like put themselves in a more dangerous scenario in order to execute, in order to pull off these cool plays. I think that idea is cool, and that's why we're seeing so much Kai'Sa and Kai'Sa Gale Force, because Kai'Sa already had her ultimate is Killer Instinct, going in to kill people off. Gale Force is a perfect thing to combine with that. That being said, it's way too powerful right now. Your AD carry popping people like that is definitely a little out of line, but it's getting a 30-second nerf on the cooldown for the
that's
active.
pretty big.
So that's definitely big on next patch.
Yeah, it'll be interesting, but I've definitely been having a lot of fun. Been getting a lot more back into League myself. Maybe we'll have to get some Flex Q going or something, Kobe. But we do have the lock-in tournament coming up here. This is going to be incredibly exciting. I'm actually super, super excited for the start of the season for the lock-in tournament. I think it's going to be a pretty cool way to kick things off, and to kind of get some baseline expectations for how good these teams are going to be. We do have to mention we're going to do our power rankings for these teams, but we are going to be power ranking for the end of spring split because there are, sub situations that are happening. Some people don't have their visas. There's going to be, differences. So these aren't going to be power rankings necessarily for the lock-in tournament, but more where we see teams kind of ending up by the end of the split.
Yeah, I think it was at least 4 separate teams have one or more of their LCS starters with visa issues, so they're going to have subs. So we can have little caveats as we're going through it, but like Isaac's talking about, that's why we're trying to make this list to project towards the end of spring. which is definitely gonna change some of the rankings, because that factors in as far as like early season or even spring versus summer. I would rank some of these teams differently with the rosters they picked up.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting year to do power rankings because like the locking tournament doesn't actually play into spring season's start. So, you don't know how much to lean into that. And then summer will have, the records from before. So like when we do power rankings, then are we just going to like wipe our mind, or, I don't know. That's a question for another time, I guess.
So yeah, that's true. You'd have to think about, do you want to do second half record or like just standings at the end of second half, or like
pure power rankings, not taking record at all. I don't know.
Yeah. I almost feel like then it would be better to just do like your power rankings for the end of playoffs. Like who do you think is going to win instead of regular season, right?
For that's summer, a good
idea. So that's probably what we'll do, but we'll think about that more later on. But do we want to get into our power rankings here? Do we want to start with the aggregate list, or do we want to start with where you guys want to start, top or bottom?
Yeah, I want to start at the top because I think that for me was the most exciting part of off season was the top end, where we're getting all these early reports trickling in. Oh, $1 million here. Oh, $2 million here. $5 million buyouts going here. And like, so I really loved all the excitement coming in with some of the teams at the very top spending really big to try and win it all. And surprise, surprise, the teams that spent, $5 million on buyouts are probably going to be near the top of the list for the players that they got.
But I have to say, I'm actually more excited for the bottom teams relative to the bottom teams in previous years, because when people built rosters, always they would just. I'm not saying compared to the top teams. I'm way more excited.
You got me with the twist at the end there. I was like, no. Okay.
Because in previous years, the bottom teams were still often like mostly veteran players who just have no possibility of competing with the top. Now, a lot of teams, I would say 40%, 4 of the 10 teams, have gone for a developmental oriented approach, which means like when you're watching these bottom teams play, you're actually watching for more than if they win the game. You're watching like, how's this player doing and this kind of stuff. So I'm also like, the league has been more stratified, but in a way that I actually like in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
I do think it's interesting there. I'm much more excited, as you say, to watch a team of rookies and see, okay, are any of these rookies going to be a future star in the league? Are any of these rookies going to be someone that these teams want to build around, in a year or 2 years when they're trying to make their push for a championship, or when they're trying to do that? It feels like a true rebuilding phase for some of these teams, instead of just what's the least bad team we could sign,
Let's not get relegated.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm pretty excited for that. But without further ado, top of the list here for the aggregate list is C9. I think I was the only person who didn't put C9 at number one.
Boo.
I had TL, which I gotta say I was a little bit surprised about. In Cloud9 though, we can start there if you guys want to kind of sing their praises.
I mean, it has to start with perks, right? I mean, this is like the biggest roster offseason acquisition ever for North America. I think, your maybe CLG double lift to TSM situation was like more hype, but I think in terms of just quality of player, this is probably the best player to ever come to North America from offseason pickup.
You have to be so careful with the wording because Core JJ exists.
Swordart, Core JJ, etc.
You have to be careful. You do.
Yeah, continue,
but
sir.
It's an argument to have, at least. This is potentially that, and at least in terms of Western player, it's easy. Like he is all time top 2 Western players. Him and Caps are battling it out still in their careers, but like the impact he has can't be understated. It's not just on the Rift; it's his versatility of play style. He's played different roles at the highest level. He's also, as far as we know, like an incredible leader and personality behind the scenes. A super grind lord who's like going to help keep everyone on top of their game. Like his impact, I don't think will be understated, and that's just like before, like the social media hype and like his personality, which is also fantastic.
I mean, he was basically the face of the LEC, right? So I think in terms of like impact or splash or hype around it, I do think it's probably the biggest transfer ever. Core JJ, if you want to argue like player skill, he won a world championship, Perks didn't, whatever. That's a different story. But as far as just like pure excitement and hype and kind of how crazy a transfer was, I do think that this one takes the cake. And it was such a step away from what Cloud9 has done in the past, where they have focused, very much more on finding like high value contracts. They have not been known as the big spenders in the league, and it does feel like that is now going to be a big change for them, right? They are dropping a huge amount of money to get perks. They have, sold off some of their players over the last couple of years. They got rid of Licorice. They sold off some of their academy players as well, and they have obviously been doing that for a while, and maybe trying to save up or build towards a huge move like this, but it feels like this is their big move. Perks obviously, is the big highlight player, but Blabber was incredible in the LCS in spring. Cloud9 obviously fell off in summer, so I think some people have a bit of a sour taste in their mouth because of how things ended for them. But their bot lane was dominating through most of the year in the LCS. Vulcan and Sven obviously were incredible. Blabber was an MVP. The big question mark for me is just how good is Fudge going to be? I have been hearing some kind of conflicting reports, but you never really know because Fudge is pretty outspoken, saying something like basically that the LCS players are brainless. Of course he's going to do well. I
like that. I like that. Fudge and Perks are both coming in just guns blazing. Perks is like, I'm not going to die.
They have
very
different
tournament.
Resumes though, Kobe. it makes more sense for Perks to do it than
that doesn't mean I like it any less. Okay. I want people to come in with fire because either way, I'm not attached to the team. So I like to see, the explosions, whether it works out, whether it backfires on him and blows up in his face, it's going to be entertaining for everybody. And I like that, it's kind of defining Cloud9 and their attitude and how they're going to approach this game. They're coming in we are going to try and dominate again like we did in spring. They just want to roll this whole league, and they're coming in with that attitude, even with all these new players that they've changed, on the squad with Fudge, with Perks. They're jumping right in and being like, you know what? We weren't a part of that summer stuff. I don't know what happened with them, but we're here to fix it, and we're going to wreck everybody. And I have been hearing similar conflicting reports on Fudge, where several teams that have Scrim versus Cloud9 unprompted said that Fudge is overrated, and that can mean different things compared to where you have the benchmark of what you think people have him rated as. But one of those teams also thought, the same one that said that Fudge was overrated, still thought Cloud9 was the best team. And so that was really interesting to me because, again, coming down to these power rankings, and why I put Cloud9 first, this is the spring power ranking. So, some of the teams that you think are going to take a little bit longer to work, you might have higher for summer or for a later split. But Cloud9, them having every single player here, Perks got here, and started scrimming immediately with the team, starting to work on it now, and them going through the whole lock-in tournament with their entire roster, actually I think will give them a pretty good edge going into spring split. I think that's a significant real advantage. And what we're discussing right now is basically, as it guys, Team Liquid first, me and Mark have Cloud9 first, but then we also have Team Liquid second. It's not like a huge difference, but I think that is one of the I think that is one of the things where Team Liquid, they just got off Arian. They showed a tweet yesterday or something where he just got it. So he's got 2 days or a day and a half of possible actual script practice here with the team, and then Santorin released his video. He still has his BG issues. He's not here at all. So I think that is going to hurt Team Liquid a bit in those power rankings.
Santorin did tweet an hour ago from when we're recording that my visa finally arrived. So I don't know
but
if
I think it's probably too late for week one. Yeah. Because I think there's a certain date by which you have to have it to be eligible for the opening games. I think
there was a lock where at least the beginning of the tournament he literally can't play. Maybe it turns out that he can get in for the later stages, but then he won't have had actual practice, scrims with team and stuff like that. Regardless, this clash of Team Liquid Cloud9 is going to be epic every single time that we have it throughout the entire year, because both of these teams spending big. Team Liquid's trying to perfect their strategy of just like paying
The
big for
Yankees.
best player.
Perfect. Their
in
strategy
every
is
role.
spending the most money.
Yeah, they're like, how can we
How
improve
can
on
we
this
spend
again?
more money?
If they lose to Perks, they're going to walk away from the season like, you know where we messed up? Not getting Perks in the offseason.
Ah.
They can buy Perks from Cloud9 and put him as their AD because
Yeah, there we
Tactical's
go.
probably the
Yeah,
only
what
cheap
was it?
contract.
It was like 4.2 million for Jensen, and then just Perks' buyout or something was rumored to be almost 5. So even the buyout is
Yeah,
more
there
than
you go. There you
several
go.
years
Played.
of the salary.
But it's going to be really interesting to me. Like both these teams are going to be incredible. I'm really excited for them. Not only in LCS but also looking forward internationally. I do think that both these teams have aspirations of that. For me, the only kind of like slight questions I had were more about Cloud9. How is Blabber and Perks going to work together? I think that's going to dictate a lot of their success. And then also, how is Fudge going to stand up to the best top laners in the LCS? I think that is going to be the two major questions for me. I have complete confidence that Perks is going to dominate mid. He's going to be really good individually. Will he have synergy with Blabber? I think the bot lane is going to be incredible. So I think this team is going to be amazing and potentially could be the champion team. For me, why I put TL number one over them was it just felt like more known quantities. There are still, some questions about obviously like how are people going to work together. You're bringing in Santorin, but it didn't feel like there was any question mark as large for TL as there is for Fudge on Cloud9. Obviously, I think Fudge is going to be good. I don't think he's going to be bad by any means, but TL are attempting to essentially get the best player in every single role, right? Like they're just like building this incredible team. And they were so good, obviously, last year. Now they have Alfari, who was, the best top laner in the LEC, at least in the regular season. Obviously, you have to talk about Wonder if you want to talk about like total skill level or whatever. But Alfari was an absolute monster. Santorum was one of the best, if not the best jungler throughout all of LCS last year. They got him in there too. They still have Core JJ, who, works very well with Tactical. And Captain Flowers has been really vocal about like how much Core JJ was dominating all the in-houses to the point where they have this Elo bot that's tracking and trying to matchmake, and they couldn't matchmake Core JJ because.
So the guy who made the bot straight up said like he watched that clip of Flower saying that, and he was like, it's not true. The bot is fine matching. Core JJ is the top, and he is the top by a significant amount. But the thing about the bot not being able to match,
well, it's a good story anyway.
He said,
never let the truth get in the way of a good story.
Yeah, exactly. And Jensen, I think, is obviously one of the best mid laners in the league. I think for Jensen, it'll be interesting to see how he matches up against Perks. And for him, I also think it's going to be a little bit frustrating because it's always like he was always a bit of second fiddle to Bjergsen, right? And now Bjergsen retires and it's like, finally, it's my time to shine. And then Cloud9 signs Perks and everyone's immediately like, Jensen, you're the second best again. So it'll be interesting to see how that matchup goes. Jensen obviously wants to be remembered as one of the greats, wants to be one of the best, and now he is going to have true internationally dominant player in Perks to compete against here. So I'm going to be excited to see how they match up. But yeah, I think both these teams are absolutely incredible rosters.
I totally agree about TL having more known quantities, like you said. Like all these players have competed at the top of their positions domestically and oftentimes internationally as well. They've all had pretty good performances. Even Tactical deserves to get in that category. I know he's a lot younger than the other people on the team and has a lot less
Worlds
shown.
was great.
But his Worlds was great. His playoffs, his first dedicated playoffs was all really good. I think he's proven enough at this point to be able to say like, yeah, he's known quantity. He might not be at his peak yet. He might still be able to improve, or maybe he relapses a little bit. But it's not like this is a totally unknown guy. Where I had C9 a little bit higher was like TL, I think, is going to also work easier together. But like they still have what I'm worried about being a little bit of a less explosive play style. I can see Santorin and Jensen working well together where Jensen wants to play lane aggressively, but like wants to focus on his lane, and Santorin's great about setting up his laners for success. But like, if things are going well, I just see the Perks Blabber lineup, which is a bigger question mark, but if it works, I see it being a much more explosive play style and getting all over the map. And I think we've seen higher peaks from some of the C9 players as well. That makes me more excited for that roster if things do work out. But I think the floor for TL is way higher, but I have a little bit more faith in C9's ceiling.
Yeah, and like I was going to talk about playstyles as well, because even with Team Liquid, like they're bringing in Alfari. Alfari is much more versatile than Impact. Really, really good on the carries, and so you can definitely make the argument, especially with Santorin doing so many like creative level 2 ganks, invades and stuff with FlyQuest. You could be like, look, they're bringing in, proven more aggressive looks with the 2 changes that they're doing. Even with that, last year, like at the beginning, Team Liquid was like, all right, we learned a lot from the previous year, from Worlds and stuff. We're gonna look to be more aggressive. And then like for most of the year, we were like, wait, what? Like question marks. Even at Worlds, at the beginning of Worlds, we were like, wait, what? And then at the end, when they're about to get eliminated, they're like, all right, now we have nothing left to lose. We decided we're in there, and we see these invades, and they're getting Broxa all these early leads, and Broxa's like, going buff to buff invades, and they're backing them up, and we're like, oh my god. It took it took a long time. It's looking great, but where's the consistent returning to that strategy? Or it just seems like there's always something that pulls Team Liquid towards some slower pace mentality, I guess.
I mean, I think a lot of those expectations of that aggressive early game was also around Broxa, right? When we talk back to the beginning of last year, it was like, oh my God, they got Broxa and they're going to play this aggressive mid-jungle style. And that never came to fruition. Even at Worlds, that never came to fruition by the end. Them tag teaming to constantly invade and do all these things. Jensen and Broxa never really had that kind of a game plan. So it will be interesting. I do agree that like Blabber and Perks obviously has the potential to be much more explosive, to be, much more that style of like, when Cloud9 was playing at their best and Blabber and Nisqy were running all over the map, you think, okay, well, Perks and Blabber could be that. But also Perks would be a stronger laner, right? Perks is Nisqy at a higher level. And if you're just dominating lane and then also able to move around the map and dominate there, like with or without your jungler, then that has the potential to be incredibly, incredibly frightening. But I have a lot of respect for Alphari, and I think that Alphari is kind of getting overlooked a bit just because we've had these bigger name signings, because Perks joined the league, because Sword Art joined the league. Not a lot of people are talking about Alphari as this big ticket signing, but this guy was incredible. He's also overlooked because he was on the worst team in the LEC, and
he still actually smashed.
Yeah, like he was smashing, right? So I really feel like that is the potential to be someone who can truly dominate in this league, and I think that is exciting, right? Like to me, potentially there's a bigger mismatch in the top lane, between Alphari and Fudge than anywhere else on the map, right? And if that becomes the case, then sometimes what else is happening elsewhere doesn't matter as much, because you can get prio through your top lane and then your jungle has advantage and so on and so forth. But this is going to be so interesting, and I hope that TL can play an aggressive style and not just sit back. Because Core JJ, we know he can be proactive. They want to have proactivity some places on the map, because when you think of what Santorin and Jensen are going to do, it's probably different than what Perks and Blabber would do. I'm expecting more of the Santorin PoE style, where they talked about in interviews that they pick for scaling and they feel that they're winning if they're going 50-50, if they're even on farm. That is more what I'm expecting from TL mid and jungle, because that is what I've seen from those guys over the last couple of years. Doesn't mean that Santorin can't gank early or make things happen, but I just don't expect for them to go for this really explosive, aggressive style.
Yeah, I just want to double down on the earlier point you're making about these being really big pickups, because when I'm talking in the beginning about like teams at the top making lots of big moves, everyone focuses on like the money tag on Perks, right? But these are such good changes, such big pickups for Team Liquid. I really think, and again, this is super early, but my NA is getting to me, and I'm already juiced for international victories. International victories are coming our way. Like, I actually feel like, and we're talking about like, perfecting the squad. Yeah. I really do feel like our top end teams, all of them making really big moves, makes me super excited. And so, that's why everyone is going to be following the clash between these teams at the top for the entire season.
I can see on Mark's face that he's willing to give his personal guarantee right now that NA will win Worlds.
Coming in at number 3 on our list is 100 Thieves. We had Kobe and myself putting them 3rd, Azael putting them 4th. Sorry. Does anyone have any final thoughts on the other two teams?
No, I think that was a good transition. Keep going. Good. You got to keep going strong. You got to commit, Mark.
I feel
Confidence,
bad
Mark,
if I move on and
confidence.
someone's like, wait, but I had one more great point.
Yeah, little crybabies then. You just keep strolling.
All right,
Don't worry about our feelings.
100 Thieves, the Golden Guardians red team. Now it's 4 of the members of Golden Guardians who were on the verge of pushing into a top 3, top 4 team. They did go up against the eventual summer split champions twice, and then they took the core of that and they added Someday, which I think most people view as an upgrade. So that's why I think a lot of us are really excited for them.
Mm-hmm.
And I also felt like I didn't think that they necessarily peaked in summer. Like that team still made a lot of mistakes. That was the team that still had issues that you could see getting ironed out with more time. So I'm super excited that the main 4 core of this is sticking together.
Yeah. Okay. So caveat here, this one, and then the two below it for me were the 2 hardest like one spot switches for me to decide on. And what gave it a little kicker was the fact that 100 Thieves, I am giving a boost for coming in with synergy of having 4 Golden Guardians as a pack. And them all being super outspoken about really wanting to stay together, to play as a team, to build on what they had kind of, had at an apex at the very end of last year. And then I have always had just so much faith in Someday, outstanding individual player, and feel like he can mesh into literally any team and make that team extremely good. That being said, like I am giving them a boost for the beginning. If we were doing like, both spring and summer, I might be nudging TSM above them a little bit. Spoiler, that is my next team, fourth under 100 Thieves.
How dare you?
Because I want to see a little bit more information on how well this sword art experiment works out, because everybody knows the travesty, the disaster that was TSM trying to get a shot calling support previously with Yellow Star.
This is not the same.
Mithy.
It's definitely not the same. It's not even close. And so I just want to get out there to just get the elephant out, because I think that argument has been kind of erroneously used to like detract from this scenario. Sword Art is a way better individual player, way better, more recent success.
Coming off of World Finals, really good in LPL.
And I really do have, and I think a lot better shot calling too. Like even the strength that they're trying to compare to. Sword Art has been super outspoken. There's a lot of videos that you can look at of how precise he is in talking about the way that he wants to play the game. I think that is just what TSM need. There are all the memes of the 9-person sleep last Worlds. I don't see any team with Sword Art ever having an issue like that, right? Because
only 8-person sleep. Yeah,
he's going to be yelling at them. But I do think that is going to take. I'm not even going to caveat with might. That is going to take longer for TSM to reach their peak than 100 Thieves. I feel like this squad is ready to go right off the bat.
Yeah, my only question with the 100 Thieves squad, I largely agree with what you're saying, is just what is the role of Someday going to be? Is he supposed to be the true star, right? Like, is that what 100 Thieves bet is? Is that Someday is actually the star? He's actually the MVP. He just didn't have the players around him, and now it's all in on Someday, and that's how we're going to win, right? And I'm just interested to see, like, is that the bet? And if they do that, is that going to work out? Is this going to be like DeMonte and Closer just playing to Someday on carries every game, get him ahead, let him win the game? Because he did create a lot of great leads for himself, and yes, he was on a weaker roster, but oftentimes those didn't turn into wins for 100 Thieves, right? He had some really incredible individual games, and I do think that he has been a fantastic import in the league. Right when he came over to NA, he was a top 3 top laner rather, potentially in the world at the time. Like he was playing really, really well in the LCK, and I think he's brought that level to NA. But he has never had the same success as some of the other imports in NA. And generally people say, all right, well, he didn't have the players, right? And so now people kind of feel like he does have the players around him. He has this solid core. I do think that people are a little bit overrating the Golden Guardians core because of how playoffs went. I mean, this was a 9-9 team in spring, a 9-9 team in summer. they didn't just like crush through the league and stomp everyone, right? They like squeaked into playoffs, and they had a good run in playoffs in summer, right? They got their first ever playoff series win in summer. And that was impressive. And I do think that I'm excited for the future. A lot of those players, we saw the development. We saw, FBI and Huhi in particular really start to shine and be playing, as one of the best bot lanes in the entire league. And if they can bring it all together and someday can have this kind of like role where he fits really well into the team, like if he's supposed to be the true carry and they play to him and FBI's your late game insurance and that works out, I could see them being great. But I just have, a little bit of that question mark in my head of how is it going to look for someday? What is the plan and is he going to work as the true kind of carry of a team?
So maybe I have a little bit of extra weight on this team as far as understanding more about the way that they are going to play and the way that all the pieces work together. Because I've been talking to Tony a lot, Zix in the off season. Which might not be fair to the other team. So like I probably have, because there's more information there, maybe I do have a disproportionate, it's a little a higher opinion. But as far as like the someday question of I feel like there always has been too much and more focus and more pressure on him as like, okay, you're definitely our best player, so you gotta be like the carry, like this is how we have to win the game. I do think this takes some of that off and provides the versatility that you need with a League of Legends team, because you can have some top carry games, but you do need to have versatility in the way that you're going to play. And I think 100 Thieves with this lineup does bring that. As Demonte, and as everybody's going to be talking about, him and Closer do like to play aggressively, to roam around a lot to the map, and they have options on bottom and top now. You just mentioned, FBI and Huhi were outstanding, and it wasn't just in playoffs for them. That was a part of Golden Guardians that was great. Yeah. For the entire for the entire split. So I think that is still going to be really solid. And I think FBI is going to continue to shine at that level. And then Huhi being reunited with Zix from their old CLG days were always like, they were the reason CLG was always talked about as having all these super creative.
They were the Galaxy brains.
Yeah, and Huhi was the roaming mid laner Aurelion Sol player, even at Worlds, drawing bans from all these top teams around the world on it and performing super well on it. So I think that those pieces can really come together for some super exciting strategy in addition to the individual pieces that I see with this team. Whereas definitely some of the other teams, I'm just seeing the individual pieces and not as much as the whole picture as I am with this team. But that is definitely why I gave 100 Thieves the boost here in our spring split rankings to bump them up to number 3. Even though I do like the pieces on some of these other ones.
And to be fair, you've been talking to Zix, you have a little bit more information. Yes, they were already a team for the most part with 4 of the same members, so you know how they're probably going to play together. But even some of the more speculative teams that are just now coming together, you can kind of like envision what it's going to be like. Like I can envision what C9's play style looks like. I can envision TL's. I can envision like a lot of these, like the teams that we have higher up. TSM, who's just underneath them, I struggle to envision more, which is part of the reason that I put 100 Thieves higher on my list, because it's not just, it's a bunch of new players. It's like players who have very different play styles as a roster, whereas someday it seems pretty flexible. Like we've seen him on hard carry Jax games. We've seen him on Ornn. He's incredible on everything. So regardless of how 100 Thieves chooses to utilize him, I don't think the struggle will be someday, though there still might be growing pains of getting him involved in the team, in the Golden Guardians core.
Yeah. I don't think he's going to struggle individually by any means.
Yeah.
I just mean more, team identity. If we're going to have you playing hard to a lane, if he's going to be playing more the defensive style and you only play to bot lane, that can become predictable. So you want to be able to be multifaceted and play towards top or bot. And I just wonder how they are going to have him function. Not that he can't fulfill these roles, but just in NA, he has never been on an absolute top team, right? And they haven't had that. So I'm going to be interested to see if they actually go all for it, because top lane, the meta right now in competitive is mostly all carries, right? Like if you don't want to call Nara a carry, okay, then maybe it gets a little bit in the weeds, but like the top couple picks are all not tanks, right? Ornn is down at like 4th most picked or something like
Camille,
that.
Jax,
And then yeah, exactly. Like you can play Renekton, you can play Gnar, you can play a lot of these tanks do still work, but definitely don't have to play it. To talk a little bit about TSM, that's who I had number 3. You guys had them number 4, obviously, very close in the rankings. I can envision a play style. Whether or not it's going to come true is another story. But like, I can tell you what I was thinking, when I did put TSM number 3. I think individually, they have some stellar players, right? I think PoE is going to be one of the best mid laners in the league. Again, he has been good, whether he was on Optic and down at the bottom of the standings or, back-to-back finals on FlyQuest, right? This guy has been really, really solid. I think Spica really did improve last year. I was very impressed, and he was one of the lone TSM members that was actually getting credit for being proactive, at Worlds. It was 9-man sleep, not 10, for a reason. Spica was in there. So
you can't put yourself to sleep. I guess
exactly.
You could. You
can
sure could.
Yeah.
But like, so I'm excited for that. There are question marks, but Sword Art I think is going to be outstanding individually, right? How he is going to work with Lost, how good that lane is going to be, that's a big question mark for me. And that's the question that you have to answer before you know if this import really paid off. If TSM drops $5 million on Sword Art and they just lose lane 2v2 every game, well, that probably wasn't worthwhile, even if his shot calling is great, even if they can get these other things going. But kind of the way I'm envisioning it is Power of Evil playing the more slow defensive style that he has played for a lot of his career, scaling up. You have a super proactive top laner in Huni. You have Sword Art who loves to roam. You have Spica who can be aggressive as well, who played heavily towards Broken Blade when they played together. I am looking at this team as one that is going to try to play heavily through top, play through carries with Huni and Spica, use Sword Art to move around the map. You get a lead top, you go towards mid and get PoE going. Sword Art's coming towards mid and getting PoE going. And Lost is going to be more the journeyman AD carry who's kind of more there for late game, right? And if things are working out, you're hoping he's like a Cody Sun. You're hoping that he's the guy who isn't necessarily crushing in lane, but is farming it up and is going to be effective in team fights. And that's kind of like what I am envisioning for a TSM that is working well. Will that come together? That's another story, right? Because they do have different play styles. A lot of these guys are coming in from all kinds of different teams, right? It's not just like one person being plugged in like with 100 Thieves. You have Huni coming from
4 new players.
EG, you have Sword Art coming from the LPL, you have PoE coming from FlyQuest, you have people coming from all over, Lost coming from Academy. So like none of these people have actually played together on a team. Maybe some of them have played together a little bit, here or there, scrimmed with each other or whatever. But this is obviously a very different beast compared to the 100 Thieves thing. But I do think that they have some stellar individual pieces. And I think honestly, for TSM, it kind of speaks to some of the things that like went wrong or went unexpected in the offseason, that they can spend $5 million on an import, like the biggest buy they've ever had, and people aren't even sure if they're going to be top 3, right? Like, because I think people were expecting it to be the double if Sword Art bot lane. And then a lot of people would be betting on them being like the best bot lane in the league, or at least one of the very best, if not the best, because Doublelift has crushed in it for so long. With the retirement of Doublelift, with Bjergsen gone, you have Lost in there, and now all of a sudden you don't know how that's going to look.
So my issue, I also like all the individual pieces, like I said, but my issue wasn't that I couldn't envision a play style. My vision is actually a little bit different from yours, because I think it's going to be more heavily around PoE in the mid lane. I had an additional question. Like I have the same question of the Lost one, but I still have a really big question on Huni in the top lane.
I was like, that's the elephant in the room for me.
Yeah, so I was like, you know what? I'm going through it, and I'm going to rank them very high because I do really support the Sword Art pickup. I think they overpaid, and they did have to deal with, there were all the tough stuff about taxes and all that stuff. But they were in crunch time, and they really needed a big pickup. I do think he is going to bring that value, and I think that Spica by the end had really heavily invested in ganks over farming in a very farm heavy meta. And that's always a really big thing for junglers, is where they decide to lie on the spectrum of hard farming versus getting lots of ganks off and pressure for your lanes. And by the end, it felt like TSM were so pressured to try and pull out some of these wins that he was like really, really going extra with a lot of these ganks. So him and Sword Art, I know are going to be proactive because I've been watching Sword Art in solo queue in a lot of these high-rated games at the beginning of the season, and he is just turbo roaming all the time, all over the map. I have a lot of the players are even complaining to me about how annoying it is, like having him in the game. Because he's like showing up to top lane at just like level 2 sometimes and stuff, and they're just like, you have that unfair feeling. Exactly. So I said, like, I really have. I think that they're going to solve their issues of like the 9-man sleep or not being proactive or not having direction. But my worries come in of like how they're going to be able to pull that off quickly with, like you're saying, putting all these different players from all these different areas together to be a harmonious team. And I do have the big question for Lost and for Huni on the top side.
Yeah, I think it's a good meta as well from what we've seen so far around the world for aggressive supports. Like we see Leonas, we see Alistairs, we see Maokai support all over the place. It doesn't feel like Enchanters are still dead for the most part in the bot lane. So it's a great meta if Sororta's going to come in and be the best support in the league, or at least, contend with core JJ. That's great. But, the Huni top lane question is still a big one for me because he is so, divisive for what the people think of him. Like the NA community views him as this paycheck stealer who has conned his way into multi-million-dollar contracts time and time again. And no one
people are jealous. They're jealous.
Is Huni the best top laner ever, or is he the best agent ever? Like people don't know what it is with him. And like I think everyone who is a player still holds him in high regard. But there are times, and this is not a shot at players who play a lot of games in scrims, who lane against him and see how good someone is at laning and how individually tough matchups are, and they go, wow, that guy's really good, and then it doesn't translate to stage. And this is a phenomenon that does happen a fair amount, where like people are like, oh man, he's so good, but it's like, yeah, but he kills himself 50% of times in games, and then that ruins your game. This is something that happened with Piglet towards the end of his career. Everyone was like, Piglet's so good mechanically, you just see the talent when you play against him, but then the plays in game don't quite hit the way they used to when they were in their prime. Like Huni was still playing aggressive when he was in on EG and Dig and these other lineups. He just wasn't getting the monstrous leads, and part of that was teammates, definitely. Like he did not have the support that we've seen out of recent years, but like people who have a really aggressive play style maintain that really aggressive play style towards the later stages of their career. Those risk reward payoffs start falling into the risk category, and it eventually becomes too much. Like I have no doubt Huni is still really good, and I hope that he has the support to back him up this time. But I think the way that people see the game doesn't just end with play style and like how you want to play laning phase, but like mid to late game. Like is Huni going flying in while PoE's pulling back? Like how do they all see the game together in team fights?
Yeah, I think those are really good points, and I would add that I think oftentimes players they hardly even watch other teams' stage games, right? Their opinions are largely based on scrims. Some players do watch the stage games, some players don't, but they're usually busy preparing or practicing or doing something for their own stage games. So their opinions are based on scrims, and scrims are wildly different than stage, right? Scrims are often much more scrappy, much more kill based than the stage games. So I think that's one thing where if you're playing against Huni and you're fighting it out, and he is really good laning, he's going to get leads and create advantages that he wouldn't necessarily always be able to do on stage. But I'm going to be really interested to see how that pans out. The other thing that we haven't touched on yet for TSM, Coach Bjergsen. Right.
Hey-o.
That's a really big question too. How good is he going to be as a coach? Is this going to be this massive positive force that really changes around the way that TSM was playing, or are they going to be plagued by some of the same issues that they have been for a long time? I think that's going to be really interesting. And even just figuring out like internally, there's always kind of the talk about, okay, things go bad, Reggie comes in, Reggie takes over. Is Bjergsen going to be like the autonomous source of authority? Is he basically getting the keys to the castle, and it says, okay, Bjergsen, you do you figure this out. I'm going to be really interested to see how that kind of shakes out and how good of a coach he's going to be. Like Bjergsen has so much respect, I think, from all the players in this league. He has an incredible work ethic. So that is why I think he will become a good coach for sure. I don't know how he is going to start out and how things are going to work for them from the word go. But I'm excited to see, because I think that could also really dictate how things go. You know, if he can help to blend these different play styles and make them cohesive, a lot of that is the job of the coach, right? And if he can do an excellent job and kind of meld these personalities and meld these play styles into one cohesive unit, then TSM might be a lot better than any of us think.
I do also really like that they picked up Power of Evil as the replacement for Bjergsen, both because of, like, you know, the interactions that PoE and Bjergsen have had over their careers, with stemming from the IEM in San Jose, where they were able to upset him, and then PoE was like the kryptonite for Bjergsen. But also just in the play style of the player, PoE on his team. And like, I've talked to so many players that have played on teams with him, and like, if he's on a team, that is a mid-focused team. That is a mid-resource heavy team. And I just find it right that is, you know, TSM. On TSM, which they don't want to stand for Team Solo Mid anymore, but it is always going to stand for Team Solo Mid in my head, because I was there at the beginning, and that's just what I think of. And that is what I think of when I think of Power of Evil, is like a big carry from the mid lane, you know, lots of resources going that way. We're talking about Sword Art roaming, Spica being gank heavy. They definitely have the resources to throw towards it. And to be a big mid lane carry. And guess what? PoE on FlyQuest surprised so many people. Everyone's always underrating FlyQuest, and like, why does FlyQuest always surprise everyone and come out, you know, with all these great results, and you know, get so many top twos for the org? A large part of it was due to PoE, and they had a pretty mid heavy resource style game as well.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, we can probably move on to the next section. It does feel like there's kind of these distinct in the power rankings. People feel like the tiers are pretty similar, but they disagree sometimes on like where people should be placed in the tier, right? And one, like, to me, it's basically C9 and TL are the top tier, right? And then it kind of feels like you have your 100 Thieves TSM as that next tier that people are kind of looking at. And then below that, it's like EG, FlyQuest, CLG, are kind of the tier below that, and that's kind of where we are entering. There is some disagreement on exactly how these are placed, but the aggregate in the rankings has EG as number 5. Mark had them as 6. Kobe and I had them as 5.
Yeah, I mean, I won't push us ahead, but like the whole reason that I just had Fly higher, but we both had EG, CLG. I just had Fly actually as my 5th. But yeah, EG for me, I think they are going to be a super fun team to watch. I actually think they have a fair amount of skill into the lineup. And I mean, everyone talks, Peter Dunn is probably one of the most talked about coach pickups we've had in a while. Mm-hmm. You know, he's taken, of his 8 coaching years, I think he said he took 6 teams to Worlds or something like that, which is incredible. Maybe it was international events and splits, I forget, but I think it was Worlds. You know, he's coached all over the world. So like, this is like a legit, you know, I don't know if the term superstar ever applies for coach, but like, you know, this is one of the best people you could hope to hire and try to wrangle a group together that does feel like they're going to be one of these teams, which is going all in quite a bit, because at least 3 out of the 5 players here like want to go in all the time.
Yeah, I mean, this is I think this is an exciting lineup for sure. I mean, just Jizuke's back in, Svenskeren, adding Impact is pretty interesting to me too, because you think of all these players and you're like, oh my god, yeah, they're gonna go in, it's gonna be so exciting. Svenskeren, Jizuke, Ignar, and then you're like, oh yeah, and then definitely an Impact as the top and bottom sides. It's gonna be so interesting to see how these parts actually meld together, because you can see it as, yeah, that means that Impact on the top side, he'll be able to withstand whatever, while all this crazy business is going on with you know, everybody roaming around and trying to pull off you know, assassination plays and stuff like that. Or Impact gets into it also. On Team Liquid, they tried to have him split push a whole bunch of times. Mm-hmm. And maybe they actually just double down on it that way too. So I'm very interested to see what the evil geniuses come up with to actually send this roster in a direction, and which one's going to be more effective. because they definitely had some splatters in the last split when like Jizuke on Kog'Maw. Oh my God, get that out of here!
That was
what
a
was the
great
other
game.
one?
It was
Was it Kassadin or Karma or something?
I think it was a Kassadin game.
There were several
There was a
EG
couple.
games where I had to like block them out of my memory because it was just so bad. But then they'd get back to winning and like doing well with other strats. But then there are just some strats that you just drop off a cliff.
That you're getting reported in solo queue.
Yeah, the Kassadin one was where he went that super offensive build. Like I think he went like
into
Conquer
into Olaf
Execute,
Karma. That
and he
was
didn't
it, yeah.
start. He didn't start Doran Shield,
Against
and he didn't
C9.
start like he went like
He's
the
like,
most
come at me,
greedy build
bro,
ever.
and then he gets smashed. He's like, okay, well.
Kassadin power spikes at 6, don't you know?
Yeah, so there were definitely some belly flops there, but Jizuke also, I think, especially when you look back to spring, was the man behind a tremendous amount of EG's wins. EG's roster is interesting to me because it does feel like one of the teams that was willing to spend big and trying to spend big from everything that I heard. I mean, Impact is a big pickup. This is a guy that has been incredibly successful in NA and obviously internationally as well. And from what I had heard, they were trying to make other big pickups also, right? They were trying to get big superstars from mid lane and trying to get, all these different players and like, oh, we want Chovy or we want this or we want that. They were looking for that huge splash, that perks, that sword art, that whatever to complement this lineup. And they have been swinging for the fences, I think, with a lot of their roster building. But for whatever reason, it hasn't really come together for them in the way that it has for other teams. And I'm not sure if that's, based on reputation of the team isn't as big as some of the ones that are already winning, events in NA or what. But I do have to give EG some credit for that because they are still trying to, kind of swing for the fences and build a roster that can compete at the top. I'm not sure if this is it. Definitely has been around for a long time, has never really, turned into that bona fide superstar. He has been solid at a lot of times. I do think like the way I would envision this team playing is, like Ignar roaming with Svenskeren and Jizuke and them making things happen. Impact would be that more solid force in the top lane. Definitely, again, trying to be that team fight 80 carry, less playing for lane. That is how I see this team working if it works well. Because we have seen that Jizuke is going to play like Jizuke, no matter what else everyone else is doing, right? Like he's going to fight. He's going to try to make things happen. And if you do have Ignar and Svenskeren behind him every time that happens, then maybe it can really work out. But it hadn't fully come together for EG, when they were trying that last time.
I think I was discussing this with someone on Reddit, and they made a good point about like if you look at spring versus summer. Summer was a bit of a fire that just never got put out. But in spring, they were one of the best teams, actually. And the case that they were making was Azael had a weaker laning phase, despite him being a pretty good playmaker, and Ignar should just be an upgrade over that.
Yep.
Kuma was a big problem for generally the entire year, and Impact's a big, just like, hey, you don't need to worry about that anymore in the top lane. And so in a spring, environment where people are all learning their things, maybe this team can actually hit that peak that they were hitting last spring with a couple more upgrades. But I still feel like that's underselling the role of Bang during spring last year. Bang was that kind of like good. He was really good. He was this consistent late game DPS threat that like if Jizuke didn't blow up or hard carry the game, you still had this in your back pocket. I don't think Definitely can do that. We haven't seen that over his career, and I think a lot of the pressure on this team will be on Definitely to be the backup carry, despite all the other upgrades that has happened for this team. Which was an optimistic way for me to look at this lineup and be like, okay, maybe I did underrate them, but I'm still a little concerned about Jizuke because they did bench him. They weren't happy, obviously, to the fact that they went for the Golden Glue Huni attempt. So it's one of these lineups that I just struggle to really get on board with.
I'm going to guarantee that you're going to see a lot of Definitely under tower and Ignar roaming and piecing out, okay? Because Ignar already had the highest, if not, it was the highest for every single time that I checked in on the stat. Maybe there's like a week where it bumped up or down or something. Or the highest percentage of time spent out of lane as a support, roaming the most. And so I just see that easily slotting in as the style for this team. We were talking previously about what sorts of styles and strategies we see for each of these teams. I completely see that as him trying to just kind of weather the storm a lot of the time on bottom lane. That's not saying that they can't go for kill lanes and stuff, because that's also something that Ignar likes. And I know that from solo queue just recently, like definitely has been playing a ton of Samira. So they could do like a bunch of like, oh yeah, he's just under tower for this game, he's under tower for this game, ignores roaming, and then be like, all right, we're Pantheon Samira, like killing someone, or Alistar Samira or something like that. And I do have faith that they can pull something out like that, especially if it is not their go-to and it isn't like the super frequent. So I actually feel like even with this team having a lot of players where you put them into pretty strong boxes, like people have very defined opinions about most of these players and how they're going to play. Even with that, I feel like they do have a lot of options, and especially with the coaching staff that I talked about, I think they can get there.
Yeah, it definitely has had a unique champion pool before with the Heimerdinger and stuff. So maybe there's some wrinkles that they can throw, so it's not always just Ezreal, sit back there, or whatever the safest meta option ends up being. All good to move to FlyQuest.
Ready. Isaac also concurs.
Yep, Isaac agrees. I think so. I was the one who was the highest on FlyQuest. I think this is the highest ceiling development roster that is in the league right now by a pretty significant margin. Part of that is due to Licorice. Like when you look at the 4-1 team compositions of like 4 rookies and a veteran, most of the veterans are past their prime in a lot of ways. Licorice is still a beast. Like just last year, he was hard stomping the entire league. Yes, it fell off like the rest of C9 at the end of summer, but like he is a legitimate superstar in the league as a veteran presence on the team, as well as the fact that the rookie-esque players that they're bringing in are all relatively further along in their career than some of the people below them. Like, Palafox and Diamond have been playing a lot together. They also came from the C9 organization. They were stomping in Academy. Jose Dioto just had a very impressive Worlds performance, and Johnson was one of the lone bright spots on that Dignitas lineup. So in that world where there are still a lot of question marks, you at least have a lot of higher ceiling, I think, for this roster. And like we were talking about, like, the FlyQuest org always seems to pull it out. And people, I forget which one of you gave credit to PoE. Don't forget they did this with the Pobelter roster as well. Like just year over year now for like two or 3 years, FlyQuest has actually been quietly decent, despite never having like a lot of superstars on the roster. So I believe in the org and the management structure there to get the most out of their players. They seem like they're really competent. So high ceiling for me, a lot of growth potential for all the players in a stable organization. Like I think that's why I have them so high.
I mean, I think better than decent, right? They made back-to-back finals last year.
I mean, but even the Pobelter roster was like 4th in regular season or whatever it was,
Yeah, but it feels like they've been on the up and up, right? And I agree. I think Licorice is outstanding. I think when you look over the last, say, like 2 years for NA top laners, Licorice has been the best top laner in NA. Right. And there have been times where, other players have maybe been outclassing him. But I do think that he has been the best in the league over the last couple of years. And Alfari's coming in. And of course, Some Days Amazing has a different team. Impact has been great. Like there's great top laners besides him. But I do think that Licorice is really, really strong. I'm excited to see how Diamond and Johnson actually end up working together. If they can kind of, recreate or even eclipse some of the success that Johnson was having with Afro. I think that bot lane could end up being quite strong. And, from there, you can really start to see how things could look pretty good for FlyQuest. You sounded pretty optimistic about them. I'm actually pretty excited for this team as far as the teams in the middle of the pack. This is the one that I think I'm probably most interested to watch and really see like where they're going to go, because they have a lot of new players, a lot of young players, as far as coming to the LCS, but they're also a team that I think has a pretty big upside that could really be successful.
This is the only roster that we didn't all agree on. I put them 5th. You put them 6th. Now it's time for negative Kobe to explain why you put them 7th. Be the downer.
I think there is a bit of ageism going on with some of the rankings here for you. And again, I am excited for this roster. I also agree that of the rosters doing let's rebuild with a lot of rookies, this is the best. This is the best, most well done one. FlyQuest got the most exciting combination. They also got one of the best veterans to lead it. So I think they did that well, but it is still a building roster, and you are still bringing in multiple academy players. Jose Diodo actually isn't even here yet. So he also had visa problems. So again, the spring versus summer ranking thing, I think is causing me to put them a bit lower here now for spring, because while I'm excited for it and I see the potential growth for this team, I actually need to witness it before I'm going to give them that bump in the rankings, like you guys are having. And I think there is
bump from 7th
you guys
to
are
6th.
well, Marcus to enemy, that might be the biggest like difference that we have in any of the rankings. Go ahead, Mark.
How can you claim ageism when you're 9th, 10th, 8th, 7th, all your entire bottom of your team is all the developmental teams? You hate young people. That's what it is.
Ageism is discriminating against old people, Mark.
No, it's any age. You can make fun of teenagers and stuff.
Fair enough. It's most commonly
damn teenagers off his lawn.
It's most commonly used against the elderly.
You just you don't understand me, Kobe, my hip youthful ways.
I think that a lot of people are also there with underrating CLG right out of the gate, which is one of the teams I put above FlyQuest as far as, yes, they are not as exciting. These are all players that we've seen many times before. And yet, they're not bad players, and I feel like we can pretty accurately judge the skill level here. And so we have some good benchmarks to work by. And I'm super excited to see how FlyQuest comes together. I think they have a very high ceiling on possibilities, but I need to see some proof first. Well, we've had so many times where we've brought up high caliber academy players, and it has not worked out.
Hasn't worked out
on the LCS stage. Also, I do feel like people are just they always mention, oh yeah, they got these guys from Cloud9 Challenger, so they must be good because Cloud9 Challenger players are always good. They always work out.
Licorice, Blabber, etc. I mean, they do have a good history of bringing up good players.
It's a good track record, but different people. So we'll see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no guarantees. To talk about CLG a bit, CLG, I agree, is maybe being overlooked a little bit. But I think it's partially due to
like, I give you a little, but it's really only a little.
Yeah, I mean, we have them six. You have them 6th. I have them 7th, right? It's a little. And for me, part of it is that I feel like CLG is one of the only teams that went to like the old method of roster building. It's like, okay, in the past, it always felt like even if you can't compete at the top, Mark kind of jokingly said earlier, well, don't get relegated, right? Relegation doesn't exist anymore, but it still feels like almost like CLG's in that mindset where it's what's like the best thing that we can scrap together, right? Instead of looking towards the future, I don't think they realistically think that they're going to be an LCS, title chaser here. Like, I don't think they think they can win the league, but they're basically just trying to take all the known quantities that they can get and do the best that they can with that, right? And that feels like more the old school thinking for roster building compared to a lot of these teams now that are saying like, all right, if we're not going to win the championship this year, let's bring in a bunch of young people and try to look more towards the future, try to see if we can find, that diamond in the rough and really, build more for a couple of years down the line. CLG has Turtle, one of the most experienced guys in the league. Smoothie, Pobelter, Brox, all these guys have been around forever and they're known quantities and they are solid players. Finn is their one kind of young guy that they are going to, I think, hope can develop and really improve. And maybe that's their kind of future bet is Finn. And CLG, honestly, in the first couple of weeks, it wouldn't surprise me if they came out of the gate and they're like, top 4, top 3 in the league for the first couple of weeks, because I think that these guys have so much experience and, it's a bunch of like players without an ego who I think are going to be able to work together, very well. Moon, people have said very positive things about him to me as a coach. He's obviously a pretty recent coach, but I've heard a lot of good things about him and that he has the respect of a lot of these players. So I think they could come out of the gates pretty hot. I just don't see the ceiling of this team being incredibly high unless, Finn is really, really stepping up and giving us something special. or Turtle can truly be like this like hard carry, because it doesn't feel like Broxah was playing at a super high level. I think Turtle was great for FlyQuest. I think he was a standout there, but I'm just kind of struggling to see like where they're supposed to really get a ton of their advantages, because Smoothie hasn't been as good over the last couple of years. He's paired with Turtle. Brox hasn't looked as good on TL. I think Poe Belter has had his moments, but it's been a couple of years since he has really been in the conversation of like being at the top of the league as well. Finn was ranked among the bottom of LEC top laners and is being imported here. Didn't do well at Worlds either. It just feels like there's not that one piece that you're like, this is the guy.
Yeah, I think some about the roster building, I think that could explain why CLG did this. Not saying it's the right decision, but like I think their community opinion currency, whatever you want to call it, like has been low, especially after last year, and they did not want to do another rebuilding year, and couldn't quite get the top talent of the people who are balling out for millions and millions of dollars, but they didn't want to go with the other rebuilding teams because the community sentiment was quite negative around them. So I could see that, as well as the fact that technically you can, I forgot about this and I remembered while you were saying it, but like you can still technically get removed from the league if you finish like 10th or 9th or whatever it is for like 4 splits in a row or something insane like that. So maybe they're actually worried about that. I don't know.
That's depressing. I don't think they're there yet.
No, I don't think so either. It's just a
small and you have to get like voted out and stuff too, as far as I know. It means
like you're eligible to get removed if you do that. But like that was mostly a throwaway. But I agree. Like it's a lot of players who they were just at Worlds, and there's like all these good things you can say about them and their careers and their history and all this stuff. But a lot of the people who made it towards were not the focal points of those teams. They were not the strengths in a lot of ways. And yeah, they're probably going to work really well together, but they're going to have visa issues. Broxah is again getting screwed over. I feel so bad for him, but it sounds like there's issues there again. They're not going to be here for the lock-in tournament tomorrow. Who knows when they end up showing here? I think Finn is also having issues. I believe it was.
I think CLG are missing both.
Yeah, so
their lockout tournament is not gonna go well,
and they have COVID apparently, according to Travis. Like it's just not a great start to the split. When this rough. Is where we're saying
hopefully it's not too bad for them.
Yeah. For some of the things too, I think with the older players, I think some people also need to give credit to like Wild Turtle. I think had a full upward trajectory.
He was incredible
ever since he got split. Benched that split. So I actually think, even though everyone's like, oh yeah, it's just another one of the older players, I actually think that he had been really improving, and he was playing better than he's played in a very long time. Like as an individual player, I legit think that is a good pickup. So like,
do you think it'll work as well with Smoothie versus Ignar? That's my concern there, because I agree. I think Turtle was great.
Yes. So I definitely worry about
it's hard. It's hard, right?
Because again, the deeper we go in the rankings, the harder it's going to get.
Yeah.
I want to make that point that we've seen it proven that players that are long in their careers, reckless at Worlds, was playing out of his mind. I don't want that to be just like a closed door as far as people just completely always writing off, right? There are players that have been playing for a while that still do improve. It's like
big agree. All right, are we down to the final tier here?
Keep drilling down.
All right, we'll see if we can strike oil here. Immortals, Dignitas, Golden Guardians, those are kind of the unanimous bottom 3. It feels like a lot of these teams are full rebuilding or couldn't get the rosters together that they wanted. I mean, Golden Guardians had their video about the budget issues, and they lost basically their whole team to 100 Thieves, which really sucks for them. So a lot of these teams have gone with a different strategy. Golden Guardians in particular. I don't think that they are looking to really compete this year. They're looking more long term, but they have 4 kind of fresh out of the gates players, and then Stixay. So that to me is going to be pretty interesting. But our number 8 is actually Immortals, as we have in the aggregate.
Just quickly on Golden Guardians, they have 2 that has never happened before. Talk about fresh out of the gate. Niles and Iconic just going straight from university, from collegiate not even academy. So like, you're going freshest of the fresh. And they were like, all right. The video I thought was hilarious. Like I felt bad for them, because, obviously NBA, a lot of teams got funding pulled. They literally opened up that video and they're like, all right, nobody wanted this. We lost all our money. So here's what we're doing. I was like, oh my God. Like they're just straight up being like, yeah, we don't have money. So this is why we're making these changes. And they were like, we got to dig super deep. We got to dig even deeper past the people that are finding the academy prospects. And we're going to collegiate prospects. So again, I am happy that we have so many of these different strategies where CLG were like, all right, you know what? We're going to see if we can have players with longer careers still improving and still, being, committed to the game. And then Golden Guardians are like, you know what? We're going to try out even, collegiate players and see if like we can even get them and start building them up before the academy stages. So I just want to see. We can have so many people say like, I told you so after these like one little instance of, of proving points or something. And we're going to have a lot of these after the fact arguments. I can already see it now, hindsight 2020. But I don't expect this team to win, many games at all. I expect it to be very, very rough for them. I know that I jumped down to the very bottom just because we had started the talk on.
They were the unanimous 10th, by the way.
This is the only unanimous ranking that we had was 10th. So I'm fine to hop down there for a second because I got to say, I appreciate the honesty. Like, it's so much better as a fan to know, like,
we're going to Worlds.
Yeah, like don't tell me that. No, you're not. Like, what are your honest goals? So like I can talk about you hitting those goals because otherwise I'm just gonna say no, you didn't. You didn't hit your goals. Like, so I like whenever teams are transparent with like what they're going through and what they think they can achieve. And it's more sympathetic to be like, oh, that really sucks. What happened to you? I hope the best for these players. And to defend straight from college pros. A lot of pros come straight from solo queue. Like it's not that unheard of. Niles is pretty high ranked. He's been 1,000K plus challenger LP. So like he's legitimate talent.
1,000K.
He's been
that is high.
1,000K plus million. 10 tomatoes, whatever, dude. Like he's good.
Where'd they find this guy? Jeez.
Well, number one on the solo queue because he was got a million LP.
He's got a million LP. How did no one else see it? We just thought to look where no one else did.
You had to scroll up.
Idiots.
You like it?
He's in a different.
Why did nobody scroll
started at number
upwards?
2? Yeah. Never noticed.
Anyways, I've worked with players who came straight out of solo queue. I worked with Bunny Fufu and stuff, and like. I mean, League's a complicated game. Okay, I'm not gonna like downplay it, but like if you're just good, you're good, and you can usually make the jump. And so there's a world where these players are, while being a development roster, actually can make some waves early on. That's what I hope to see. Is not like because it is for younger players and Stixay, who is not like the licorice like we're talking about. So anyways, I think that I'm just looking to see these players have good showings and step up a Blaze Olive, someone who's been around for a long time in the academy scene, just make some waves. When you go up against Perks, solo kill him. That make me really happy. Like those kinds of things.
I would say that like for all these teams kind of in this bottom tier, you talk about expectation setting. To me, what a successful season for Golden Guardians or Dig or Immortals would be is having a young player on your team show promise, like show that improvement throughout the course of the split. If you're Golden Guardians and Niles is getting better week over week and having that growth and having those good individual moments that you're talking about, then you can say, all right, well, this split, we didn't have the money to compete at the top, but maybe now we have a player that we can build around, someone that we can look towards the future. Because if you can get some really good NA talent on your team, then down the line, you can actually import around them and fill in the slots, right? And then you can start to push for a championship. And that's, I think, what rebuilding should look like for these orgs, is that you should be searching for that player, searching for that NA player that you want to keep. And, that is kind of what I'm hoping for all these squads. But we'll jump back up. Immortals we had at number 8. I had them at 9th. You guys both had them at 8. So very similar for both of them and Dignitas. But these are all going to be rosters with a lot of question marks around them.
So
I think.
I didn't know you were going to keep going. finish your thought.
I was just gonna say for Immortals, you know, their kind of veteran presence is Xerxes, right? Xerxes has come over from EU. He's been playing in the LEC for a long time, but they're bringing over an OCE bot lane. They're bringing over I'm probably gonna say his name wrong, Gilhoto from Origin, the coach from there. But Destiny and Raze are gonna be their bot lane. These guys have won 3 times in the OCE. They are some of the best laners, you know, in the OC. Raze in particular, a lot of people were telling me that they felt like he was on par with FBI when FBI was there. So there's some positivity there to be taken away. Obviously, Revenge getting promoted up from Academy. Insanity is sticking around from last year, and he had some good individual performances. But I think, again, for Immortals, you know, if Raze is starting to look like a guy who could become an FBI-esque talent in NA, you've had a successful split, right? They're looking for these players that they can build around.
For the Raze thing, especially for me, I had a lot of people saying Raze is better than FBI and Osh, but FBI improved so much over here. Like FBI has been here for years now, and I think that it'd be weird to say for people to be like, oh yeah, then Raze is gonna slot in right there, because you know, like the training arcs diverged like a while ago, and Raze is super good and popular for a reason, but Immortals is one of the teams that got hit really hard with visa issues, and I had been hearing that they had been scrimming with even 4 substitutes, which is actually just not even your team. I think that they've gotten some more of the players in now, so it probably won't be, you know, 4 subs for the lock-in tournament. But while they are having like some of the most visa issues, I was kind of excited when I saw these pickups. Like Raze, I was excited for. Xerxes also. I was really enjoyed watching Xerxes in LEC. I thought he was such a creative jungler. He was always in on, you know, new jungle champions, trying to try more creative pathing and strategies. So I was actually pretty excited to see him come over. As far as, you know, one of the rebuilding rosters are using a lot of newer talent. I think he's a good leader and you know, more senior piece to have on the team. You know, for guys like Revenge and like Insanity. And I am also excited that Insanity, after, you know, performing pretty well with Immortals in his rookie split, gets to continue and gets to keep his spot as a mid laner, because he was one of the ones when they were getting really close, like literally one mistake, one play away from winning a bunch of these LCS games. And I'm just glad that, you know, he's gonna get another chance.
And to Azael's point about, like, you're looking for potential, you know, people to build around the future. I think this is one of the development teams that actually has a lot of those options. Revenge is raw. Like, when you look at the Academy power rankings of top laners, that, you know, like, he was not that high up there compared to all the other players, but he's a 2-time solo queue, you know, top of the ladder player. So, like, he's gonna be a talent that you want to see develop. And so that's why I think, you know, he's probably not going to be great this split, but he can improve a lot. Same with Raze. You know, if he can reach that FBI level, now you suddenly have potentially really strong players to build around the future. If you can, you know, shore up whatever the weaknesses end up being. If those 2 guys work out, maybe you keep Xerxes. And I think the lineup will be pretty easy to work with, I assume, for Gilhoto, who has a fair amount of experience. You know, didn't finish great with Origin last split, but has had 3rd place finishes and stuff for the organization before. I think even a couple finals appearances, but I could be getting my timelines wrong.
Yeah, the other thing I wanted to touch on, you know, after you're talking about FBI improving here, Kobe, was one of the things that I have heard from, you know, some of the smaller region players coming over, is that one of the things that they're really excited about with the LCS and getting the opportunity to come to the LCS is that, you know, if you're coming over from OCE or some of the smaller LATAM teams, you know, some of these teams in the world don't have the same kind of resources that the LCS teams do. You know, oftentimes it's like one dude for, like, as a coach for the entire coaching staff. You know, Spawn said that's how it was for him on order, that like he's basically doing it all. Sometimes they have a little bit of help from someone here or there, but oftentimes it's one guy in a dream basically as the coaching staff. You compare that to like a Team Liquid, they probably have like 20 people on their staff.
Chefs.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, not even just that, right? But they have like position coaches, they have multi-way coaches, they have multiple academy coaches, a bunch of
they've got
LCS
Spawn himself
coaches
now over there. Speaking of which,
right? So like, you know, it's completely different. So you have a lot more resources, a lot more help if you are hungry. And if you use those well, you can improve. You can be the FBI. You can be a player like that who can make the most out of all this help that you're getting that is available to you and really try to improve at a rapid rate. So that is what I'm really interested in seeing, especially from the guys that are coming in from other regions, is can they improve more rapidly in this environment? When you're looking at Newbie and Jose Dioto and Rays and Destiny, and these guys that are coming in, from different regions, especially, I'm very excited to see what their progress looks like, right? Because that is really how I'm going to be kind of tracking these bottom teams. Because let's be honest, it's like even just the spending is in a different stratosphere at the top and at the bottom of our power rankings, right? Yeah. When you're looking at these teams that are dropping $5 million on a player, these three rosters in the bottom probably don't even cost $5 million combined, right? It's just not in the same ballpark as far as that. So you cannot judge them by the same metrics.
All right, to quickly hit on Dig, because that's the last thing we didn't really get into as much. Azael, you have them rated the highest at a whole extra 1 tier higher than me and Mark. You have
8?
them up at 8.
You're crazy. How can you say this?
Yeah, they got Fake God and Saligo from 100 Thieves Academy, who both technically did get subbed into the LCS at different times. When 100 Thieves were trying to shift around their import slots.
It'll be interesting. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of question marks, a lot of issues with this team. I think for Dignitas to do well, Fake God is really going to have to take a very prominent role. He has been very good in the academy. When you talk about Revenge not stacking up as well in academy, Fake God has been really good in academy. He was okay when he was in the LCS, especially when he was getting his Jason and Aatrox and stuff. He has a couple champions that people really do have quite a bit of respect for him on. That becomes more difficult as you play against some of the LCS caliber players who either have answers to those champions or are just going to ban them out if you're too much of a niche player. Afro and Dardoch are obviously the two guys with a lot of experience here. But will they be able to kind of mold and level up these players in the same way that Afro was able to kind of play with Johnson? I don't know. Neo is pretty raw, and I think Dardoch has his frustrations when playing with players that aren't to the level that he is expecting. I don't think that this is going to be a top level team, and there are going to be some players who don't have nearly as much experience as him. So it'll be interesting to see how they're able to kind of make this click, and if they're able to make anything really happen. But again, for me, it's about searching for the kind of the future talent for Dignitas. But of course, they do have less unknowns than I would say the other two teams that are kind of down in this tier.
I think that's totally fair. There's a lot of players here that have a little bit more experience, like you said, that they've already subbed in, and they're going for a 3-2 approach instead of a 4-1 in terms of rookies to veterans. So in that sense, I think you can make that argument that they could be better out the gate, or at least earlier on. But I think the Dardoch point and how committed is Afro at this point, these kinds of questions are potential negatives as well that this roster faces that I don't think a Golden Guardians faces. There's always the concern about play style and how well people are going to do, but also with this, I think there's some other how people are going to interact that comes up.
I've also heard that they don't even have a head coach as of 10 days ago.
So I spoke, I reached out, I was talking to one of the guy who's, I think he's called their division coach, and I don't want to make their announcements for them, but it sounds like the structure is more in alignment to traditional structures, even if the titles don't quite work the same.
Okay. He's a coach. So, just say it, Mark.
Yeah.
Congratulations to Dignitas coach
Jimmy Harrison. Yeah, he was with Golden Guardians before, so I'm pretty sure they have a head coach. He's called the division coach, but
it doesn't matter what he's called as long as they have someone.
Yeah.
I'm actually giving a lot of credit to Afro. You guys going over each player. I think Afro was playing great, and he was a huge reason why the Dignitas bottom lane was always talked about as the best, part of that team when they were way down in the dumps. So that is the one part that I am excited for. I am excited for Afro to see if he can keep it going, because I was so happy last split when he just turned it on again. He was making all these big plays once again, for the team and doing really well. I always like seeing when the players with the longer careers have these upward trajectories at the very end. They still got it. So we'll see if that can continue. Let's get into our Honda MVP section, though. Who is going to be your most likely candidate for the MVP for spring 2021? Lock in your votes now before you've seen any of them play at all.
Perks.
Boom. You're going Perks. You're going Perks. I'm going Core JJ, you noobs. Yeah, $5 million buyout, blah, 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 blah. Core JJ is still the best player. I'm going to put my money there. Also, then we have winners and losers. So either you guys, we're not all the same. Either you guys both get the
I'll
growth.
swap to Sword Art for fun then.
I just think it's easier for a mid laner to win MVP than it is for support. That's the only
won
thing.
that shit though.
Well, then
I know
who won
because
last
he's
time?
incredible. He's incredible, right? But I would just say in general,
what is that, Mark?
It's
I said
easier,
who won? Support won last time. Core JJ's
it's
got
easier
2 MVPs.
for a mid laner, I think, to really shine. But if we don't have any enchanters and we have all playmakers, then supports really do have a good shot at it. I'm going to be excited. I think Perks is coming here pretty hungry and looking to really kind of like prove that he's here to win. So I'm going to be interested to see how he works. And I think if Perks is playing at his best, it's going to be something special to watch.
I'm definitely excited to see it. Yeah, I guess that's it. We're just picking our votes for the MVP. I think they're all pretty good ones, but that's actually going to do it for wrapping up this episode. We have to get into the checks for the actual LCS show starting tomorrow, Friday, as I'm assuming that we're going to be able to rush this dive episode out right after we finish recording it.
No pressure.
Thank you so much to Honda once again for making this episode possible. Remember that you can check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Anchor, as well as we have a new YouTube channel for all things LCS, youtube.com/LCS. You can find this or that there. Great shows like The Dive itself, as you're already watching it.
Yeah.
The other thing I will say is that we are going to have Monday as our regular release date.
Right.
We are, we released late this week because we had a lot of tech issues. But we are going to be on a Monday release cadence because of that's going to be our work schedule. We're going to have Wednesdays like last year are going to be days off for us. So look forward to the dive Monday. Hopefully we're not going to have any more tech issues going forward. So that should be the next release date. Hope you guys love the lock-in. We will see you there.